Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Place Scrutiny on Thursday, the 9th of October, 2025. Believe we have some technical issues for those watching at home. So I don't know if you can see us. I'm assuming that you can't. Best be trying to get it sorted, but I hope you can hear us. Can you hear? Can everybody hear at home? Yes, or lots of nods. That's great. That's what we like to hear. So, without further ado, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome all those officers that are attending today. I will assume that they will introduce themselves as they speak, so everybody knows who they are. And we go straight into the agenda. But first, I'd just like to mention thank you very much to Councillor Bryn for attending the Welsh Water with me last week. It was really interesting, and we learned a great deal. So great for that. Right, so today being a special meeting, we don't have to have all the items on the agenda that we often do, so going straight forward. Apologies for absence. I don't believe we have any. Am I correct? No apologies. Declarations of interest as and when, unless anybody shouts anything else from any of the committee members. And then to public open forum. And I don't believe we have any, so unfortunately, which is slightly a brown mark in my book, I'm afraid. And then confirmation of the minutes held on the 25th of September 2025. So we have the minutes showing somewhere. I believe that the plan is to put them on the screen, which I don't know if those at home can see. Just the live stream isn't working. Yeah. So Councillor Dimmock has a question up. I believe Councillor Dimmock and Councillor Brown have some minutes, alterations to the minutes they wish to add. And what we've said, Councillor Dimmock, was that we'll show it on screen, and then the highlighted bits will show the differences, which is the things you've asked for, I believe. Whilst my able friend to my right solves the problem. Right, Councillor Dimmock, do you wish to speak and say what you wish to have added? Because we've put it in, you can see it as in a different channel.
Yeah, so the minutes actually have me. Oh wait, there I've got two screens going with the recording. The minutes state that I said that the Gypsy and Traveller site will mean over 1,000 additional vehicles. What I actually said was, and nearly 800 homes and a large Gypsy and Traveller site will mean well over an additional, well over 1,000 additional vehicles, please, Chair.
Okay, so are you right? So they're trying to alter. Okay, you're happy. Okay, Councillor Dimmock, are you happy with Robert?
I can amend it properly later, but that's just a little note to myself. But are you happy with that, Councillor Dimmock, or did you have any other changes?
I'll put the word in the chat because it's great, like the other way round. I've just re-listened to it again just to make sure, so I've got it word for word.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there anything else in the minutes you wish? And there's another bit there that we just spotted. Okay, and then we go on to Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown, would you like to say anything on your changes, please?
Yeah, I think obviously there was a few. If I go through them, I think it was that it was the developer that stated that, as opposed to me, and just had a weak foundation of an assumption. So that was just a minor change, really. It's just that it looks as if it's coming from me, but that's what I read from somebody else, if you see what I mean. And on this one, it was stating there was 320 objections to the highest number in the consultation. The site is promoted by Barwood Land, who specialise in planning primarily for residential, and the site is sold on with planning for a profit. They are not a building company, which is an important consideration for the viability of the site, and it would be passed on to another site developer. In comparison, the alternative Chepstow site has a direct building company interest, and on a traffic light basis, the alternative site does better. Neither Chepstow site should go forward due to traffic capacity concerns. But the Mountain Road site is madness due to its closeness to High Beach roundabout.
Thank you. And then there were just two other points where you'd pointed out that we had Councillor Bryn's name down instead of yours, so we made that change as well, which Councillor Bryn had also raised. So if you're
Yeah,
happy with that.
I think some of my comments, for example, about the Shire Newton site came under Emma's under the heading for Emma, and it was obviously me that said it rather than Emma. I don't mind Emma helping with my site, but
No, we'll move those comments into your section because they've been written by councillor, so we'll make that change as well.
Okay, was there any other? I can't remember now.
I think that was all of your ones.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and I've asked for a couple of alterations, or one alteration in particular as well, and that's in reference to outline planning and whether it would be required if it was given and what would happen. So I'm trying to see, has that been highlighted?
Chair, that's basically to read.
So I sought clarification regarding the procedure should a developer submit an application for outline planning permission prior to the replacement local development plan having been through the planning inspectorate hearing formally adapted. And then it went on to Craig saying about head of placemaking, responding that he would be not expecting any applications in the immediate future. He noted the applications might be received following year, and as soon as they were submitted, they would be made available for public inspection. We will not be able to approve any planning application until the RLDP has been adopted and therefore gone through rigorous examination process. So I then asked for further clarification. Does that mean that if they apply for planning or outline planning, it can't be granted until it's gone through Welsh Government? Craig confirmed. So yeah, it's pretty much that sort of stuff. Okay. All right. Anybody else got anything else? No? Are we all happy? All happy on screen? Wonderful. Oh, great. That was good. Right, so without further ado, item 5, destination management plan. Now we've got lots of people in here to speak to us today, so we're going to be enlightened, no doubt, with wonderful news and lots of economic technical details on how wonderful we are in Monmouthshire, I hope. So I believe Nicola Edwards, Kevin Ford are the two that are going to speak to us, though I dare say the cabinet member might like to have a first opportunity. Am I right by any chance? Oh, I am.
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
There we go.
Always.
Onward, please.
So yeah, thank you for this opportunity to present the destination management plan. I hope you'll agree that it's been well worth waiting for, and you by the end of the meeting you're as excited about it as we are. I would like to thank everybody who has contributed, but particularly our expert consultant, Mary Stevens, who has really supported the council in looking across the UK and Europe into what we can learn from places which are really making a success of sustainable tourism, not just in numbers and spend, but in the positive impact on their locality. I think what this process has brought home to me is that Monmouthshire's visitor offer isn't just a matter for our wonderful tourism team, but all for the many tourism businesses in the county. But it has to be a whole authority approach, and working in partnerships, as we do with everything, with the town and community councils, Bannockburn, Kyneog, Wye Valley National Landscape, World Heritage Site, and all the private sector businesses that make up that tourism offer. So thinking through our visitor experience, it really is very, very holistic. It starts online with what people write and say about Monmouthshire, with films that are set here, with things like television coverage of the recent cycle races. And then it's shaped by transport, by being able to get here, by being able to park, the roads, the public toilets, and even the weather. So we can't do anything about the weather, but we need to ensure that every other part of that experience is positive, as well as that we provide the business support for new businesses and opportunities for training in hospitality and those chances of really successful hospitality and tourism careers. And the strategy process has identified a lot of strengths, but also some gaps in our offer. Because people come here for countryside and castles and peace and quiet, but increasingly they come for events here or in Cardiff, or as part of a trip around the UK. They come to towns for food experiences, for cycle events, weddings, or just to visit family. And what's been attempted in the plan, along with in our emerging cultural strategy, is very much to draw out what gives each part of Monmouthshire its buzz, its flavour, helping to develop that brand Monmouthshire that we can promote, that vibe, the quality of life that not only draws in visitors, but brings our younger residents back to live here if they've gone off to university, keeps those people here to really feel positive about building their future in Monmouthshire. Because of course, a lot of the jobs depend on tourism, and the cost of living hasn't helped the tourism industry or any others. And within the plan, we set out how we intend to work with the many tourism businesses in Monmouthshire with a strengthened partnership. And I think we can learn in that from neighbouring counties. As usual, we are trying to do a great deal with very little resource. So an important part of the plan is to bring in and direct future funding. But before I hand over, can I just thank Nicola, Kevin and Colette for all their hard work on this. They really, I'm always impressed by their dedication and the depth of their knowledge, as I'm sure you will be.
Thank you very much, Councillor Birch. So for those who don't know me, I think you all do, but I'm Nicola Edwards. I'm the Job Share Destination Manager alongside Kevin Ford, who's sat beside me. So we're very excited to share this plan with you today. This is what we'll be talking about between us. A little bit on how important tourism is to Monmouthshire, why we need a new plan, how the destination performed over the last plan period, what the process for review was, what key stakeholders thought of the current destination offer, the summary of the draft plan, and how we got there, the story. This really tells the story of how we got to where we are, which I think is really interesting. How MCC proposes to support and oversee, coordinate the delivery of the plan, how we will measure success and report it, and how the draft destination management plan has been received by key stakeholders. So it's important because it's part of the foundational economy, so all other sectors of the economy rely on it. It generates visitor spend to support rural services, high streets, local heritage, culture and leisure assets, event programmes, employment opportunities, etc. The number of tourist days and nights is also used by Welsh Government to calculate MCC settlement figure. The place branding and visitor experience impacts on perceptions of the area, its attractiveness for investment generally, not just for tourism investment, and the quality of life for citizens. And the main message that we want to get across really is that great places to visit can make brilliant places to live. And this plan is about delivering the maximum benefits for our local communities. So according to our 2024 STEAM results, tourism was worth 352 million to the local economy. It supported 3,422 full-time equivalent jobs, which equates to approximately 15% of employment in the county. 2.28 million visitors. And when I've reported on our economic impact performance before, I've emphasised that not all visitors are worth the same in terms of their economic spend. And for 2024, it was the 78% of the economic impact of tourism came from staying visitors. And the most valuable staying visitors are those staying in hotels. I think we've covered that before. So why does the county need a new destination management plan, and who is it for? Well, the previous plan ran to 2020 and we know what happened then. We've got a fast changing policy environment, which I'm sure many of you will be aware of. Global tourism is changing and there are trends that we can capitalise on with a new plan. We need to update the existing plan to better align it with the council's community and corporate plan, its vision, and with other key council strategies. And although the plan was led by us, it's designed to provide a common direction for all those organisations, businesses, etc. involved in tourism, and to guide all tourism investment in the county, again for the benefit of local communities. And there's a recognition this time that we really need to be appealing and attracting younger audiences and to better balance tourism with local housing availability. So in terms of how the destination performed over the previous plan period, so there was strong and sustained growth in tourism in Monmouthshire over the last 10 years, with a 28% real terms increase in the value of tourism since 2015. Monmouthshire recovered faster from the pandemic than other parts of South East Wales and has significantly outperformed region-wide growth over that same period. Growth has mostly been driven by a surge in non-serviced accommodation, including a 121% increase in self-catering provision. In 2024, however, the serviced accommodation sector began to recover post-COVID, and that helped us to maintain growth. And most of the direct economic impact of tourism comes from accommodation, followed by food and drink. So this is the story of the process that we went through in terms of reviewing the last plan and drafting the new one. So stage one was about asking what people thought of Monmouthshire's current destination offer. And this involved direct engagement with 96 stakeholders, including 12 MCC councillors and staff, 18 key industry representatives and leaders, 4 town councils, 9 representatives from partner bodies and organisations. Plus, we also did an online destination survey, and we have responses from 157 residents, 61 businesses, and 80 visitors. The feedback from that engagement and online survey was then put forward to stage 2. And between stage 1 and stage 2, the consultants also undertook a market and product review and identified some best practice partnership models and examples of how they worked. So stage 2 was development of some initial ideas to take forward to the destination management plan. And we consulted on those initial ideas. Excuse me. So there were 2 separate face-to-face stakeholder sessions held in November last year. And those separate stakeholder sessions, one was the project board, which was MCC officers and cabinet members, and the other group was a group of key stakeholder, the stakeholder advisory group, which was key private sector partners. And what did those key stakeholders say about Monmouthshire's current destination offer? So these were the stakeholders that we engaged directly with, and the feedback that we had was that overall there were very high levels of positivity about Monmouthshire's current destination offer or visitor offer, which will be of no surprise to you. But the following concerns were raised during that consultation period. So that it was felt that branding and marketing communications tended to reinforce the perception of the area as a nice, quiet place to retire. Potentially too focused on the beauty of the landscape and rural attractions. That there was potentially limited appeal for younger people and family audiences, and that the rate of increase in self-catering capacity was starting to impact on local housing availability. It was recognised that there was a lack of resource within the destination management team, and that post-COVID visitor economy businesses were being faced with a plethora of regulation and policies that were starting to impact on their business viability. And I'll now hand over to Kevin, who's going to go over the results of the destination survey.
Hi all. Yeah, I get to do as I think of the fun stuff, which Phil might disagree, but surveys, everyone loves a survey. This is one of the key ways we monitored how, how we're going to proceed with the plan, essentially. We ran 3 surveys late last year, one to residents, one to businesses, and one to visitors. Previously, pre-COVID, we'd only ever sent surveys out to visitors, logical tourism, visitors. But we have seen over the years, and especially during COVID, the importance of residents for the local tourism environment, as well as obviously the businesses around here. So it's important to see what they want as well as what the visitors want and how we can please all areas. As it was conducted in late 2024, it was obviously quite a miserable and wet summer. Especially compared to this year. And so you'll see some of the results, some of the answers are, it was too wet. Sorry. The responses are quite good, actually, from the visitors, came from all over. I have a fun little map, which you can't see very much because the little dot all the way over in Alaska for one visitor. There was one down in Adelaide, I think they were. But I just imagine a lot from sort of clustered around Monmouthshire, Herefordshire, Newport, Cardiff, and then quite a few from further afield, London, Southampton, Exeter, Birmingham, those sort of areas. Usually the areas we tend to market towards are that sort of M4, M5 corridor, as well as the local area. The business survey had a good mix of businesses, it's about 30% accommodation, which was also broken down between various types of accommodation. We had attractions, activities, producers, retail, restaurants, organisations like Valley of Kyniog, Wye Valley National Landscape, Welsh Water contributed. And then the resident survey, again, pleasing, there was a good dispersal of responses from across the county. Every major town, village was represented in that as well. So can you go back one? As you can imagine, we asked quite a lot of questions, but we boiled down a lot of them. But if you really, really, really want to know more, I can provide even more information. One of the things we asked for residents was, what kind of impact do you think tourism has on various sectors within Monmouthshire, such as the quality of the local towns and villages, the quality of life, the distinctiveness of the communities, and the quality of the environment. And pleasingly, on here, you can sort of see left is bad. It damages. Grey is neutral, no effect. Light blue helps to maintain. Dark blue helps to improve. And you can see in all of these that they were quite positive, the residents, about how tourism impacts us. sorry, especially on the quality of local town and villages and the quality of life in Monmouthshire. It's slightly more negative when they go towards the quality of the environment and national habitats. Obviously, there's been a lot in the news about that recently, but even with that, it's still mostly positive. Yep. Thank you. With the businesses, it's a bit small, sorry, but we've asked what do they think of the offer here. The first two questions there are mainly around sort of branding and the tourism offer as a whole compared to other parts of the UK. A bit even overall. It's slightly skews towards positive, which is good. But as you can imagine, comparing the brand Monmouthshire to say Ballybrackine, Brecon Beacons, or Wye Valley National Landscape are always going to suffer there. But it's certainly opportunity to improve, and these results are better than they were when we've last done these sort of surveys. Also, it's good to see that businesses feel that we as Monmouthshire recognise the importance of tourism to local economy, and that they think Monmouthshire is a great place to invest in a business. There was very few negative responses to that one. A word cloud, everyone loves a word cloud. We asked the sort of top priorities for improving the destination, as well as their main challenges facing Monmouthshire. Quite similar results across both of them, and you can see that they very much feel like the town centres are a challenge and a priority to improve. So you can see lots of references to towns, shops, parking, roads. You can also see on the right, there's also quite a few references to the sort of increasing demands, I suppose I would say, on them. So costs, business rates, those sort of areas which have increased over the years and made it harder for them to do business. And so then we asked the visitors what they think of the destination offer, and overwhelmingly positive, 8.59 average rating out of 10. No one said below 6. We asked those that did give a score, 7 and below, why they gave that score. Again, it's a similar sort of things as the businesses said. Parking a lot of the time, public toilets always a classic, and public transport. And then we asked everyone who responded, even those who gave us 10, what they would do to improve the quality. And again, very similar: parking, public transport. There's your wet weather complaint there. I'm sorry, it's quite hard to change that, but there we go. And we asked them how likely they are to return. Again, very, very positive response. 91.5% said they were very likely to return. And I dug into that. That includes our Alaska person, so great. Yeah, so very few people felt like they wouldn't want to return to Monmouthshire. And how likely are they to recommend Monmouthshire to a friend or relative? Again, mostly positive. The net promoter score was 58, which, given the little thing there, show what it means, but that's generally very good. Industry average tends to be around late 40s, so it's above that average. And then we asked some questions. We asked in the survey, we asked a number of questions which were sort of separate to each, and then a number of questions which are identical in each one, so we can sort of compare and contrast different areas and what they think. So this is one of the identical questions: what are the 3 strongest aspects of Monmouthshire? And I can see they all put scenery, as you can imagine, the environment, walking. Food was very positive, especially the residents. The residents all praised the food, which is, they're the ones eating here the most, so it's always a good thing to see. But you see that throughout as well in the businesses and the visitors. And then on the other hand, the weakest aspects of Monmouthshire, again, all of them you see, unfortunately, public transport, parking across there, and generally a lack of services in towns they're sort of looking at there. Was the one thing you'd want to know about Monmouthshire before to end on a positive note here, because as you can see, they've all put businesses, residents, and visitors, beautiful as the main words they want to know. So clearly they were, enchanted by us. And yeah, very positive words throughout that, which is great to see. Back to Nicola.
So those survey results and the stakeholder feedback from the direct engagement were then used to prepare to develop a first draft. And we then consulted on that first draft. It was shared with key MCC officers at one-to-one sessions in April this year, and any concerns raised were addressed. An updated draft plan was then shared with key industry stakeholders at a team session on the 14th of May. And then I've just put on there the process for political scrutiny, and obviously we're on bullet point 4, we're place scrutiny committee on the 9th of October. So one more stage left after this, hopefully. So this is just a summary of the meeting notes from the stakeholder consultation event, just to show how positively it was received amongst stakeholders. So 81 engagement and 83 sentiment are very positive results for that. And here are some very positive, enthused stakeholders who fed back after that session. And it isn't just that I've only included the positive ones here. We actually didn't receive any negative ones or even any neutral ones. These are the only comments that we received, and they're all, as you can see, very, very positive. And all very enthused and excited. So to move on to the draft plan, which I know you've all been sent a link to, but I'll just summarise that briefly for you. So the purpose of the plan overall is for the birthplace of British tourism to become a blueprint for a new generation of regenerative rural destinations, and the most inspiring, connected and welcoming place in Wales to stay, invest and live. In terms of ambition, by 2030, we want to be Wales's standout rural destination, a place of imaginative experiences and characterful places to eat, drink and stay, rich in sense of place. With the aim of bringing vibrancy to our high streets, adventure to our landscapes and confidence to our communities through more and better tourism that celebrates and enriches our quality of life. The strategic objectives of the plan are to achieve 25% increase in economic impact and jobs supported by tourism, to deliver improved infrastructure, better basics like transport, public toilets, signage, etc. To support a vibrant culture with more cultural opportunities and increased civic pride. To deliver enhanced experiences which are high quality, imaginative, place-based experiences that are sensitive to the environment and to help us on our way to zero carbon tourism and responsible access of the environment. And we believe that delivering these will grow business, resident and visitor satisfaction with the destination to ensure that tourism works for everyone in Monmouthshire in future. So the target markets that are identified, the local market, residents, especially younger people and families, core UK visitors, independent explorer segments particularly, which are identified by Visit Wales as important target markets within 2 hours. And we want to give these vital core audiences more reasons to stay and spend in our communities, particularly in our town centres and on our high streets. The future growth markets were identified as wider UK, international and special interest groups, such as outdoor activities, equestrians, gardens, weddings and corporate, where we feel we've got particular strengths. So the value proposition, i.e. the thing that differentiates what we're promoting to every other destination in the UK and beyond is Monmouthshire made experiences. So uniquely local but international in quality, and that are imaginative and enriching and based on Monmouthshire's unique sense of place, so that border county identity, but also the creative spirit that is part of Monmouthshire's DNA. The drivers of growth. So 3 were identified in Welsh Government's Welcome to Wales strategy. So those were spend, seasonality and spread. And in Monmouthshire, we're proposing 3 more. So stand out, stay, because we know staying visitors are the most valuable for our communities, and sense of place, to give us that sense of differentiation and to be able to compete with other destinations. So 3 key priorities are identified. The first, to revitalise the county's characterful towns and villages through high quality tourism. The second, to reignite our natural landscape with activity and adventure in ways that are sensitive and creative. And thirdly, to develop imaginative experience with a distinctive sense of place that enrich our quality of life. And these 3 align with Visit Wales's core product themes. It's also proposed that these inform Monmouthshire's marketing and product development priorities. They will also together deliver that more youthful, vibrant brand that aims to attract and retain a younger audience and help address some of the issues with our ageing demographic in Monmouthshire. So the enablers of the plan and of growth are identified as partnership marketing, so that refreshed brand that I was talking about, that is more focused on vibrancy and urban market town experiences, and less so on the beautiful landscapes, although that will obviously continue to be a big part of our marketing, because it's what people most engage with, but we need to balance that slightly. A concierge style visitor experience, so ensuring that our businesses are more joined up, that they're cross promoting each other, and that we're catering more for that resident market as well. With strong support structures, including a strengthened destination management partnership and tourism associations, based on sustainable and inclusive delivery, with community ownership, environmental management and inclusive access, based on creativity and innovation, collaborating with creative industries, the cultural strategy and local storytelling. And how will success be measured? Well, tracked through a set of baseline metrics and realistic growth targets, including 25% growth in economic value and tourism related jobs, increased satisfaction amongst visitors and civic pride amongst residents, 20% increase in serviced bed spaces, especially 4 and 5 star, focused on town centres, increased uptake of public transport and active travel, and community sentiment and environmental impact monitoring. And I think we're finally on the last slide, you'll be pleased to hear. So it's proposed that MCC will support in 2 ways. One is coordinating and overseeing the delivery of the plan through the Destination Management Partnership, and taking a cross-authority approach, which is what Councillor Birch was talking about in her introduction, to make sure that we use all available levers available within the authority, from policy to planning and placemaking. It's proposed that a new and revitalised destination management partnership is established, which is chaired by a cabinet member, which includes public, private and third sector partners, meets quarterly and reports to the South East Wales Tourism Forum, and is supported by training, learning journeys and strategic oversight. And that is my presentation finished. So I happy to take any questions that you'd like.
Thank you ever so much. It's very interesting. My first request, and I'm sure I won't be alone, is could you share the slides, please? Because there was an awful lot of technical information there, easy at hand. So are you able to do that now? Because I'm sure lots of questions will be coming from those slides, and not everybody might have got it all down.
Yes, that's fine. What's the best way to share them?
Just email them to.
Okay.
Yeah. Give it to Hazel. That's what we all do. Hazel and Rob, what would we do without them? Okay, so without further on, who would like to ask some questions, or do we want the slides first? And I'm trying. Oh, yes, we have got hands up. We've got Councillor Davis first, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers, for that comprehensive presentation. May I too associate myself with your remarks, Chair, at the beginning in recognising the considerable effort that's gone into developing this strategy for the Place Committee's consideration today. I've got a few questions in no particular order, but I wanted to perhaps begin on some of the enablers, interrogating some of the enablers, and particularly some of the partnership marketing that you referenced. I just wonder whether the Cabinet member in particular had any assessment that she could share of the potential value of leveraging both the Cardiff capital region and particularly the Marches growth deal to support some of those ambitions around partnership marketing and promoting this unique Monmouthshire visitor offer. So perhaps we'll start with that question in the first instance, Chair. The value of some of those entities and how we might leverage some of those partnerships in support of this ambition around partnership marketing of the visitor experience and visitor offer. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Cabinet. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's now that we have once we have our plan in place, that opens up all kinds of opportunities and to work regionally and across Cardiff Capital Region in particular, because we know that many people who are coming to Cardiff and coming to the region don't just visit one county but visit across the region. They come for events that is in Cardiff and they book accommodation in Monmouthshire. They go to the Big Pit and the ironworks and other venues across the region. So yes, there's a lot of work that happens, I think, across South East Wales networks at the moment, and we'll definitely be looking to strengthen that.
Well, I thank the Cabinet member for that response. Another question that occurred to me, which I didn't necessarily get a sense or a feel for from the presentation, but there may be some both quantitative and qualitative data and insights that officers can share following this meeting, and that was around whether the visitor survey in particular had identified any glaring or critical gaps in terms of the tourism assets beyond infrastructure, beyond some of the complaints and grumbles about the weather, but any critical assets that one would typically associate with the visitor economy that might helpfully signpost this authority to proactively working with some entrepreneurial spirited citizens to develop some new asset. I'm thinking, for example, I look enviously at the ICC in Newport Celtic Manor. Are we missing, for example, in Monmouthshire, a dedicated conferencing centre? Is that a critical gap in our tourism offer? And if not, is that something that the Cabinet member and this authority could conceivably investigate? I'm just wondering whether there are any other critical assets that one would associate with a thriving visitor economy that the survey responses and the stakeholder engagement shone a spotlight on.
Yeah, I don't think we're about to look for a rival for the ICC, rather to work with them and work with the Celtic Manor, and they are. When people arrive at the Celtic Manor and come to the ICC, Monmouthshire is part of that offer to them. There are gaps that we've identified, particularly I think for things for families to do, when weather isn't great, more destinations and more open air destinations. Things like Go Ape and similar, but the venues of all kinds, attractions and things to do of all kinds, very much welcomed. And I hope that the Shire Hall renovation and the new museum will be one of those kind of destinations that are part of a good holiday.
And a final question, if I may, Chair. Just looking on our neighbours here as a border county, particularly the likes of Powys, Herefordshire, I just wonder what competitor insights can officers glean and share with this committee in terms of how we differentiate our offer to some of those neighbouring border counties, which, dare I say it, have a comparable offer in terms of scenery, natural landscape, thriving market towns, in the case of both Herefordshire and Powys for that matter. I just wonder whether there are any additional competitor insights that can be shared from those border counties in particular, which can help both signpost this committee's thinking and subsequently the cabinet member and the destination management governance, which you've helpfully introduced today, but that can further set apart and differentiate Monmouthshire's offer vis-a-vis some of those comparable border counties in particular.
Yeah, so I can come in there. So I think we didn't identify anything specific in terms of gaps from the visitor survey, but we do know what global trends there are, what visitors are looking for increasingly, and those are local cultural experiences. And increasingly, visitors are looking to connect with local communities. They're not looking so much anymore to come into an area and for it to be a transactional experience. They actually want to learn something or feel something when they're here. And it's about focusing and developing those sorts of enriching experiences that will give us the competitive edge. And that is the reason that we're so focused on sense of place. And I agree, there are other counties that are border counties. We're not the only ones, but we do have some things that are unique to the county and to our individual towns. And it's those things that we're trying to celebrate. So that local culture, those local traditions, that connection with local communities that we're trying to promote and celebrate in this plan. Does that help answer your question?
No, it certainly does. I appreciate that clarity. One final question, if I may, Chair. I just wonder whether there was any feedback from the stakeholder survey regarding the proposed tourism levy that Welsh Government are mooted to be proposing, and also any evidence regarding the tax treatment or the rates treatment for holiday lets. Are there any insights from this survey in particular about how those policy ambitions of Welsh Government may interact and indeed may impede or stifle the tourism economy in Monmouthshire? Keen to hear any evidence that may have been spotlighted by the stakeholder activity and stakeholder engagement conducted by the destination management team. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah.
So just to respond to that, I suppose the fast changing policy environment is the context for this plan. And obviously, Monmouthshire County Council Cabinet have made their statement about the intentions to not consult on the visitor levy until after the current administration period. But we also have a plan that is funded under our Shared Prosperity Fund project to undertake a policy impact assessment with visitor economy businesses to try and assess and estimate the impact on business and on the destination, to inform decisions like the visitor levy, but also to make sure that in relation to the plan that we're delivering, that it makes sense and that it's aligned and it's realistic.
Excellent. Thomas, do you have David, sorry, do you have anything else to add?
No, thank you. I think I've detained the council long enough. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I believe Craig O'Connor, officer, would like to have a speak. Craig.
Sorry, it wasn't me. Actually, it's for Colette just to pick up on, give Councillor Davis a bit more information on the Marches partnership. Then I'm happy to come in on the Capital Region, if that's okay, Chair.
Help yourselves.
Oh, there we go. Just picking up really on the question around partnerships, and we are engaged, as probably you're aware, in the Marches partnership. Tourism destination is one of the themes that we're part of, March to the Marches, and what we have been doing and part of is the development of the feasibility study, the tourism feasibility study, which has been completed and has identified a range of strategic projects within that, which align with our existing core priorities. So it's very collaborative. It is seeking to try to build upon what we're already doing rather than looking at something different. And it is very much one that we're hoping can generate some opportunities in partnership together. So.
And just for Councillor Davis and the Scrutiny Committee in terms of work with the Cardiff Capital Region, there's certainly conversations at the moment to develop a prospectus across the region. So in terms of promoting Monmouthshire as a place for economic businesses and commercial development, but also for visitor accommodation as well. How can we support and sustain sustainable tourism options? So it is about making sure we get those links in and we can help businesses to any additional funding that might help them in terms of startups. So that is going on. That is a clear piece of work with the Capital Region to bring that on forward as well. So just to give you reassurances that those conversations are certainly happening, and it's how best we place Monmouthshire within the region and try and promote it as much as we can ultimately to attract visitors and to help tourist businesses as well.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Lisa Dimmock, please.
Thank you. And Nicola, thank you so much for your report. It was lovely to look through it and read some of the information, but also I think you chose the real appropriate photographs. I think it really shows how beautiful Monmouthshire is. And I don't want to be dismissive of any feedback on the questionnaire, but Monmouthshire's beautiful, come say sunshine or rain, you know, a moody day in the Wye Valley can, be a wonderful experience. I've got two questions. Obviously, I think it's a really good report, and I think the plan to aim to grow tourism by 25% is a great thing. But how will the council manage potential tensions between increased visitor numbers and the protection of sensitive environmental areas like the Wye Valley, River Usk, Gwent levels? And my next question, what steps are being taken to make sure Monmouthshire Tourism offer a more accessible offer for visitors with disabilities, and how will we track progress on that? Thank you.
I'm happy to take that. So the first question about how do we protect sensitive areas, I think that's through collaboration with partners mostly, that where we do have those tensions currently, for example, on the Sugarloaf, we do work with partners to agree the best approach for those particular circumstances. We usually don't promote those areas that are particularly sensitive. That's not to say that others don't with their on Instagram, you know, that's the issue that we've got really, that a lot of our most beautiful places are very Instagrammable. Lots of people want to go to them all at the same time, and sometimes occasionally that does cause problems. What we try to do with our marketing is to distribute visitors more evenly across the destination, to promote hidden gems or things that people may not have thought about visiting before. So we try, you know, it's a multi-pronged approach really, by working with those partners to disincentivize people from going for those very sensitive areas, but also to promote other hidden gems where there's less pressure, or even perhaps trying to redistribute it across the year more evenly. At the moment, you know, tourism is still quite seasonal between April and October, and it's about giving them reasons to come out of season. And events are a great way to drive those visits out of season. So, you know, we've got a number of different approaches, but on the whole, we have very few problems in Monmouthshire compared with some other destinations, but there are some sensitive areas, and we try and address those collaboratively with partners and through our own marketing efforts, I think is the answer. The second question was about accessibility. So one of our shared prosperity fund projects that we've been delivering in the first round and as an extension this year is the Destination for All project. And under that, we've given out capital grants and revenue grants to organisations and businesses to improve the accessibility of their offer, of their experience. And at the same time, we've also been making our own online channels more accessible for promotions. So by adding audio eye functionality to the Visit Monmouthshire website, and producing 360-degree tours online so that visitors can make a decision before they get there about whether they think it's accessible, you know, that they will be able to manage access at that location or venue. So I think, again, we're doing as much as we can with the funding available. Of course, there will always be more that can be done, but other partners like Abergavenny Town Council, for example, are working on accessibility as well. So I think, you know, there are lots of things across the council and in our own team and with partners that they're doing to make the destination and the customer journey both more accessible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but another question just come out of it listening to you. Obviously, if you use walk-in trail apps, it has, you know, the difficulty rating. Is there a national site that allows people to know if how accessible a town is, or can you self-certify in any way to see? Do you understand what I'm saying? Am I explaining myself correctly? So walk-in apps, if you're going for a hike, it will have a rating of how difficult it is. Is there anything to inform residents on how accessible a town centre is, or an attraction? Does anyone know?
Yeah.
It's just something, listening to you then, it just sprung to my mind.
Just to pick up on that, I think one of the things that we tried to do, and obviously the destination management plan and the team deliver collaboratively across the services, is working with our countryside access team as well. So it is very collaborative. Looking at accessibility is one of the key and core themes of countryside access, is countryside access and improvement plan. So you've probably seen some of the great work that's been happening across the board there. So specifically in terms of your question, there isn't anything specific that can pick up on that. But what we are doing is we are putting resources into community engagement sessions and community links to ensure that there's opportunities there that people understand and can be part of that development and that growth. So it is something that we're working on. We haven't got all of the details of all of that available at the moment, but it is certainly an area that we're seeking to grow, and we're doing it in partnership and cross collaboratively. So,
thank you, Colette. That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
That's okay. Councillor Brown.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much for the work on this plan. I would have liked to have seen this in a member seminar first, rather than come directly to Place Committee, because it just feels like it's a bit late to put in ideas or changes, and I hope that's not the case because of it coming directly to Place Committee. One of the responses that I did give in the RLDP was to ask for the vision of Monmouthshire to actually include tourism. And basically the answer that I got on that was, well, it's just one of the policies of the RLDP. Now, I don't think that actually stresses the importance of tourism to the economy. And I'd have liked to have seen that particular change, because obviously we've got the figures here showing how important it is for Monmouthshire. Looking at the survey results that you gave, I mean, one of the main things that they seemed to say was that it was beautiful scenery. Now, I appreciate that you may want to change that somewhat, but I still think that should be included as part of the, the aims and the purpose, and we shouldn't lose sight of one of the main assets that we do have. And the other complaint that seemed to come through was about car parking. I'm not quite sure what can be actually done about that, but one of the things that you did talk about as well was place branding. Now, what I was concerned about was that basically there is a picture in here of inspiring culture, and also in the introduction and on page 28, there's a reference to the Netflix drama Sex Education. Now, I didn't know what that drama was about. Obviously, it's got a particular title, but I'm concerned that this may be a reference that's age inappropriate. It is rated 18, and from looking at I've only watched 10 minutes of it, and I don't think it inspires culture. I think it inspires well, I wouldn't really like to say possibly teenage pregnancies and various other things. So I don't think it's something that we want the place branding to be associated with. I appreciate that there is film tourism, but I do feel that it's a tawdry reference which shouldn't really go on our plan. And I think I'd like to see it removed and the picture taken out and something else put in. With regard to, I can give you a very graphic description of the first 10 minutes, but I mean, I think it would, of the series 1, but I think it would raise quite a few eyebrows if I did. Also in schools, sex education is actually, age appropriate. So I don't think this is something that we really want in our plan. I mean, if you're after film tourism, obviously there might be other episodes like you've mentioned, young Sherlock and so forth. But I do think that part of the plan does need to be amended. The other thing is that you mention about younger people and families wanting them to come along. Well, I think, sort of pictures of Great Barnet Wood with when the bluebells come out are actually, really a really good thing to look at. And it's actually one of the things that younger people and families can walk along and do for free, because quite often families are looking for days out that are free. And I don't know how much if you're talking about contributing to the economy, I'm not sure how much they would want to contribute to the economy, because obviously, things are tight when they have to pay so much for entrance fees. I've also got some further questions, but I think that will do for the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it will. To the front bench, please. In order, whoever would like to go.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Brown, for the questions. There's quite a lot in there. I didn't want to come today to talk about the replacement local development plan, but as you mentioned it, it's certainly worth mentioning in terms of the links that this destination management plan has with the LDP and the impact that tourism has on our economy. in that vision in the LDP, it certainly talks about making sure that businesses are thriving. That does include the tourism industry, and there are significant policies in that LDP with regards to enhancing and improving sustainable forms of tourism and inviting visitor accommodation as well, such as hotels and other things to support the tourism industry. So I certainly think these two documents are speaking to each other and they've been collaboratively worked on together. And I know that me and Nicola have had a number of meetings in terms of how we can try and promote that visitor accommodation in particular, because there's a need for that across the county. Certainly take on board all the comments with regards to the film industry and the use of sex education. And then I guess that's a discussion that will continue in terms of whether that is appropriate to be used or not. But it is a massive visitor attraction ultimately, and we are getting a number of visitors come in to see that based on the back of that TV series. So I think that is something for us all to consider really in terms of how we take advantage of successful media items, and if it's attracting people, should we be promoting those aspects. But completely take on board the comments that you're making. I think that's a part of a wider conversation ultimately in terms of how we take that forward. But certainly the number of visitors that's attracting via our websites is proving successful, and it's bringing people to the area, and then they obviously link into other aspects of our tourism in terms of our protected landscape, etc. And just to pick up on that, in terms of there was a conversation earlier about how we protect our waterways and protect grunt levels in our designated areas. That is really, really positive now, ultimately, in terms of the place and community well-being. We look at that all together holistically. So nature, environment, countryside, tourism, planning, all working together to make sure that we do protect our heritage assets and our landscape and our protected areas, and make sure that we don't have a detrimental impact on water quality at the same time. So all of it is under that same umbrella, working together collaboratively and holistically. So hopefully that gives members that reassurance that that those services are working together collaboratively to make sure that we are protecting all of those bits as well.
Just to also pick up then as well in terms of the engagement sort of side of things, as Nicola's very clearly and Kevin presented, it's been through quite an extensive engagement process, both with stakeholders, with councillors, through the website, with residents, and that's been over quite an extended period of time as well. And I believe it's been on the Visit Monmouthshire website as well for how long would you say that's been on for? About 2 or 3 May, yeah. So quite a little while as well. So the extension of that, I think, has I believe offered quite a helpful opportunity for people to be able to understand what we're trying to get across and have the opportunity to feed back into that. So we've tried to address that and to try to ensure that everybody's had the opportunity to feed into the process and been as inclusive as we possibly could.
Okay, Councillor Brown, round 2.
Yeah, I really don't think it's appropriate. I mean, it just reminds me of a time when, models and scantily clad women, from the point of view of sex, were used to sell cars. And I don't think it's appropriate that we have that reference in the what I would call, instead of destination management plan, I would call it the Monmouthshire tourism plan. So I don't want to end up on a safeguarding point of view, encouraging children of below the age of 18 to actually be watching this particular series. And I think you're advertising it, and I don't think it's appropriate for you to do so. And I mean, I don't think we should be that desperate that we use those means to attract tourism. If they come because they've seen that, that's fair enough. But I don't think we should be advertising that. So I'd like to particularly stress that point. And I've pointed out in the documents where I think that should be taken out.
Okay, 1 second. So I just asked the front bench now, is it appropriate to have that reference removed or is it not? And I see that Councillor Birch would like to speak on that. You can come back again, Councillor Brown, don't worry.
Certainly consider it. I'm sorry, Councillor Brown, that you didn't enjoy the series. I think great many people did, and amongst everything else, they were looking at Monmouthshire scenery and greatly enjoying it so much that they wanted to come here. But I'm sure there are many other areas, things that have been filmed here and are still to be filmed here, that probably have the same effect, if not the same reach.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I just think that something else could be used instead, you know, because obviously there have been other series that have been put forward. And, you know, I think, you know, for example, over the summer, we went on a boat tour on at Simmons Yacht, and basically they just went through the plain history of what it was about. And I think if they'd referred to that series, I would have found the tour somewhat tainted. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brown, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, sorry, I do. Yeah. I was looking at the you know, the 51% self-catering. I think it said occupancy. I might be wrong, but you know, obviously one of the issues with regard to that is the 182-day requirement, and I just wondered if you got any update on that. And also, there has recently been a licensing of Airbnbs as a draft bill, and I just wondered what you thought about the particular implications of that aspect. And then I did want to come on a bit more about children, younger people and families. Thank you.
Okay, right, let's deal with that first. And just to bring to everybody's attention that we did last year send a letter and we did have a response. So that has just been, Hazel has kindly just sent it all out to everybody on the committee for us to revisit that information. But I'll just pass forward to, I believe Councillor Birch's head is nodding. So Councillor Birch.
Yeah, we know the 182 days requirement is very challenging for a lot of businesses in Monmouthshire. I think there have been some indications as set out in the plan that there is perhaps now an oversupply of what do we call it? Non-serviced accommodation.
Self-catering.
Self-catering accommodation. And I think I'm very glad actually that the registration and standards that are being brought in effectively create a more level playing field between the requirements for tourist accommodation and the requirements for longer term letting. So I think we can perhaps expect to see a bit of a correction in the market as a result.
Sorry to interrupt there. I just want to ask that question whilst you're there. So we're saying, did I understand you correctly, that there's too much? Did I understand too much or not enough?
The Rent Smart Wales rules were brought in for permanent lets some time ago now, and there has been a gap in bringing forward the same kind of registration and standards and safety rules for self-catering holiday accommodation. That gap will now, I think, be regularised with the new registration. I don't really believe that any of our very well established and reputable self-catering accommodation providers have much to fear from the registration or from the regulation, because they're already providing accommodation of a very high standard. But obviously the proposed legislation has only just come out, and I know that the team will want to engage with the sector in ensuring that the Welsh Government gets the detail right, as we do on all legislation as it affects the sector.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown, back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on that because last time we had a report to this committee about the 182 days, we were told that it was causing problems with the self-catering side, on which we relied quite a lot for our tourism. And obviously, you know, the aim of this is to stay. And I wouldn't have thought that would have changed. I mean, have you had a survey of people who provide an up-to-date survey, because that was the last report, and that was the reason why, Chair, I think why we actually wrote to the Welsh Government, because we were concerned about the impact and the strain it was putting on our self-catering accommodation because of the 182-day rule. So the answer that I've got doesn't seem to allude to whether or not the self-catering people who provide self-catering in Monmouthshire have been consulted about any changes. Thank you.
So thank you for that question. So the policy impact assessment that we're proposing will look at all of the recent and proposed policies that are impacting on the visitor economy businesses. And a lot of it, as you've identified, is particularly targeting the self-catering sector. But as you can in my slides, you can see there's been a massive increase in self-catering accommodation over the period of the last plan. And that is really a mixture of some very, very good businesses who are complying with all the legislation out there, and many, many others for whom it is a side hustle, and they are not necessarily complying with all the regulations and safety requirements to make sure that the overall visitor experience is positive. That has had the effect of making it more challenging for those traditional self-catering businesses and harder for them to achieve the 182-day occupancy threshold for business rates. So I think if the legislation that's proposed and has already come in starts to contract that self-catering capacity, that will overall be a good thing, because our accommodation profile is at the moment too skewed in favour of non-serviced accommodation, and we know that we desperately need to address the shortfall in the serviced accommodation, which delivers the most value. So I think our self-catering sector will perform better, and there'll be higher standards, albeit in the short term. There is, obviously it is challenging for those businesses who are having to comply with this and try and understand and interpret all this new legislation and policy coming out. But I think in the longer term, it will be a very positive thing. It will raise standards for visitors, ensure safety, and make sure that what we're taking to market in terms of the product is fit for purpose.
Yeah, I appreciate that. If I could come back, Chair, but it doesn't deal with the current situation where, the better self-catering accommodation may be struggling with this 182-day. And actually, it sounds as if because there are other self-catering accommodation which perhaps don't conform as much to regulations and so forth, that's making it even more difficult for them in the short term. So it doesn't really answer the question of what they're actually what they actually need at the moment. And I appreciate this legislation is to do with the sort of things that you normally have to deal with when you rent a property, like, for example, fire safety monitors and gas and electric checks and all that sort of thing. But it says licensing. I haven't looked at it in great detail, but will there actually be an additional fee? Is that additional fee, and who will they be licensed with? Will it be the local authority? And will that actually add more costs to the self-catering? Although I appreciate that they do need to have these safety rules. Thank you.
I believe Colette wants to answer.
I'm just going to jump in there and just say that I think a lot of those questions, to be honest, are part of a process that we're going through really now with the policy assessment review that Nicola's just mentioned. I think until we've been through that process, I think, you know, it would be probably premature of us to actually try to answer all of those questions in one go. But certainly we recognise, you know, many of the issues, and I think Nicola's, you know, set out many of the sort of, you know, the thought processes behind that and where we're coming from. And we'll seek to obviously engage in that process as we continue. So I think it's, you know, it's an ongoing process for us, and we recognise, as you say, some of those issues.
Okay, thank you.
May I just add that there is a complex interaction, I think, between the holiday letting market and the local housing market. And I'd just like to say how delighted I am that some of the hotels and guest houses that we are no longer needing to use for homeless accommodation have been reopened actually as hotels and guest houses in recent months. And I think that is a, you know, a real success in terms of the confidence that businesses have in Monmouthshire.
Okay, thank you. I was quite intrigued. Sorry, I know, Councillor Bryn. So I was a little confused. You say 25% wish to increase, and yet we're talking about, I wrote it down actually, side hustle of accommodation. Sorry, Nicola, can you clarify what you really meant from all that, please? Because how does that increase and not?
Okay, sorry. Probably, yeah, it does not helpful me using that term, but a lot of the accommodation on shared economy platforms like Airbnb, sometimes it just pops up for a few weeks at a time for if there is an event on in the area. Those people are obviously looking to secure a bit of income on that property. Sometimes it's just part of their house that they're living in. Those aren't necessarily part of our usual visitor accommodation bed stock, although we try and track it across different booking platforms. It's very complicated these days because even our traditional more established accommodation providers are also selling on Airbnb because of its popularity. So you can't necessarily always separate the what we would call a more traditional type establishment and business operation with this more temporary accommodation that comes onto the platform for short periods of time by people who aren't necessarily experts in the field. And it's that really that is starting to impact and starting to, we've got overcapacity in the market at the moment, and that is why we've got occupancy rates that are as low as 51 and 52%. And that's what's making it difficult as well for those traditional businesses to actually compete, because some of the more temporary accommodation or the less established that aren't complying fully with the legislation, they can put it on the platform at a more competitive price. So that means that our traditional businesses are having to offer more discounts. They're having to add value to their offer in some way. And at the same time, we've had a cost of living crisis, so there's less money in consumers' pockets. So it's a very complicated picture, and it's not black and white. But I think overall, we have got too much capacity in terms of self-catering accommodation at the moment, and that the statutory registration, which is coming in at the same time as the visitor levy, but not, they will bring in the statutory registration across Wales. That's not discretionary. That will be a good thing ultimately. And the statutory licensing builds on that first round of legislation, which is more of a light touch approach to it. But it will certainly start to get businesses more used to regulation and more used to the idea that they have to register and their accommodation property if they're going to be letting it for short-term lets for holiday accommodation. So I think it's a positive. We haven't seen the detail yet. It's only in draft form, and it only was introduced to the Senedd in draft form on Monday, the statutory licensing bill. So it's too early to say. We don't know the detail of that. We do know more about the guidance that we've received about the visitor registration. And that was something that that traditional businesses were very positive about. They want this to make it a level playing field. So I don't know if that helps explain it a bit more.
It does, but I have another question for you. I'm sorry, Councillor Bryn, I know. I and my husband, and in point fact, when I was a child, used to go and stay in farm B&Bs. And whilst I understand that you're saying that everybody needs to be registered, and I don't have a problem with that, but it was certainly seen as a farm diversification then, and so I sort of feel that, and I've certainly have stayed in people's accommodation that's part of their homes many years ago. So I'm sort of wondering if you mean quite what you said. So I'm wondering if are you happy with all you said, or do you want to add anything?
I think those farm B&Bs and farm cottages and farm diversification businesses are a very important part of the rural economy and important to the sustainability of many farm businesses. They're often stereotyping here perhaps, but they're often women-led businesses as well. And I know we would want to support all of those businesses through the changes that are coming through.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bryn.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, it was a surprise. Thank you very much for bringing this paper to us today. I have a few questions, if that's okay. Hopefully I can read my own scribbles. Can you tell me how the survey itself was conducted? How were the visitors approached? Was it just online? Because I noticed locally it's easy to, the normal platforms we got online. And can you increase the visitor responses going forward so that we get more than 60? Because it seemed like quite a small number. I know it was great that it was diverse, but it was quite a small number considering the thousands of people that come here. Also, regarding our aim to encourage safe and responsible tourism, I noted from the survey with residents, one of their only concerns really was the negative impact on the environment of our visitors. Do we kind of promote the countryside code, because that does promote positive behaviours for protecting farmers' livestock and encourages visitors to take their litter home? Fly camping seems to be on the increase in some areas, though I don't know if it happens here, but we wouldn't want to see anything like that. And obviously we're very proud of our recycling and reusing here. Do we kind of promote that as part of our image of what are we promoting, our expectations of our visitors when they come here, that this is what we do here, sort of thing, this is what we're expecting of you when you come. And finally, the integrated impact assessment document states that the plan promotes an increase in the use of the Welsh language, but I didn't really see any evidence of that reflected in the document itself. According to a Welsh Government Overseas survey, 84% of the international tourists regarded it as important that their trip was distinctively Welsh, with 59% stating the importance of seeing or hearing the Welsh language during their visit, demonstrating an appetite for a greater sense of Welshness amongst international visitors. Language is an intrinsic part of our Welsh identity, woven into the fabric of our landscape and heritage. And I felt that failing to highlight this really felt like a missed opportunity in the document. The Welsh language is only mentioned twice, and the first time on page 47. I really felt it should have been kind of a vein going through the whole thing. You mentioned that people come in and they want to see part of the culture. They want it to be a two-way thing, and yet the language is an intrinsic part of our culture, and it was not really mentioned at all. And I thought that's a missed opportunity. Diolch yn fawr.
Happy to jump in on the survey. Yes, it was quite limited responses, in comparison to the wider thing. Obviously, it was done over quite a short period of time because we wanted to get it done before the as we were planning this. But what we are looking to do going forward, and unfortunately this was done slightly before, is things like the Let's Talk Monmouthshire app. I know they've pulled that out now. It's almost having a sort of semi-permanent survey. So this can be like we did this last time in, I think it was 2021, and we tend to do it every 3-4 years previously. But if we're hoping to try and do a more of a rolling survey with regular pushes, annual pushes, so that we can get a more of a tracking, not just, oh, what did they think 3 years ago, 4 years ago, but what they think every year, and get a better response, because that's, so then it's not quite as affected by, well, they thought it was rubbish because it was wet. It's well, you can see that this year was good, so how does that differ, when it feels really sunny versus now? Do they really much happier this year? Are they about the same? That sort of thing we're hoping to do going forward. And what we have done previously, and we did then, was offer incentives. We often go to the businesses and say, are you willing to provide something, for people who do the surveys to win something? It's hard, obviously, with, the business surveys, for example, really offer the businesses their own product. But yeah, for the visitor survey and the resident survey, certainly we do that, and we're looking to do a sort of a rolling one going forward. That's in the early stages of developing that, really. Do you want to?
Yeah, so that's great for locals, but what about the foreign visitors who won't be on that app, is what I was thinking.
Oh yeah,
That makes it more of a challenge, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's always a challenge. And sorry, and when I didn't answer, it was entirely an online survey, and so we were pushing it out first through our social media channels primarily, as well as our newsletter channels. The ones that we tend to talk to our visitors via, and that would be and that's always a challenge at the end of the day. It's incentivizing them, and you've seen things like oh, we can offer you X, and they might say, well, I'm not planning on coming for 3 years. But generally we can but if we're doing a more regular push generally for residents, Let's Talk Monmouthshire and that sort of thing, we can also then expand it so we are more regularly going out to visitors saying, because we'll have the questions going, please complete our survey, and it's just trying to regularly push it out to them instead of the more, again, 3-4 years we've been doing previously.
We were accosting people who were attending the cycle races with a QR code and a promise of a potential voucher, and I would think that would be the kind of thing that we would probably want to do again.
Yeah, we've
I was going to suggest face to face, because I always thought that would have been the best way of doing it. Literally
we've been doing so for lots of events we've had recently. For example, the cycle race and the Armed Forces Day down in Caldicot Castle. We've developed more bespoke surveys for them, so that we're often asking questions there that are very much related to the visiting of that. What else did you do when you were there? Did you stay somewhere? Did you eat somewhere else? Trying to get these sort of answers and seeing the actual benefits of these specific events to the wider area. But yeah, and so we are, we do go out at these specific occasions. And we have previously done things where, when we had master programs in Tinton, we asked them to, promote the surveys. So we do, at specific events, we do also promote various surveys, but they tend to be bespoke to the event itself.
So I was going to come in on the safe and responsible access. So we do target environmentally and socially responsible visitors with our marketing, and we do help distribute messaging from other organisations like Keep Wales Tidy, and there are some that specifically working with the activities sector, for example, to promote responsible use of areas of landscapes and responsible behaviour. So yes, we do that on a regular basis, and that responsibility environmentally and socially is very much part of our brand and part of our messaging, because we know the one thing that our visitors come to see is the beautiful landscape, and that's the thing that we need to protect.
Can I just jump in again? Obviously, that cross collaboration with our sort of our countryside access team and obviously our green infrastructure teams in terms of the way that we manage not only just the whole of the county in terms of where we're able to influence that, but on our own sites. and our rather extensive rights of way network is something that we work across teams to ensure that we're able to address those kinds of issues. And Countryside Code, obviously, is something that is embedded in obviously the work that the team delivers. The community engagement work, community links, volunteering, all of that is part of the sort of awareness raising approach that we do, which respects the county and obviously encourages visitors to sort of participate and engage within the county in a sensitive and thoughtful way. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brent, do you have anything else?
It was my third question about the Welsh language.
If I can come in, I think you've raised a very valid point. Obviously, it's not perhaps as important to Bram Monmouthshire as it would be in parts of North Wales or places which are Welsh-speaking communities. But I think you've raised a very valid point, and we should perhaps look at it again.
Yeah, if I could just add, sorry, I think that's probably an oversight. We obviously have a Welsh version, and the consultant who produced this is actually first language Welsh. So she was probably trying not to push the Welsh language, but we do completely agree with you, and it is a very important part of our offer. So we'll address that.
Yeah, I think the Welsh shouldn't just be in the Welsh language version. It's for everyone, not just, and I think it's as important here as it is in any other part of Wales, I'm afraid. So yeah, deal.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm afraid I've got a few questions that others haven't asked. So, oh, Councillor Strong, you've got your hands up, and I didn't realise. I do apologise.
That's okay, Chair. I've only got a couple of things to say. I really welcome the report. Really vibrant message to go out to both residents, to businesses, and others sort of further afield. I just wanted to touch on, and I think Colette mentioned sort of our Monmouthshire sort of assets. There's only one mention of Caldecott Castle in the report, and actually it's the big food festival weekend, so it doesn't actually give a picture of our beautiful castle. But I'm sure there were lots of films that have been filmed in the grounds that could possibly be put in instead of the one mentioned by Councillor Brown. Anyway, I'm just interested in, especially sort of coming out of COVID, we've had a lot of events at the castle, and what I'm just interested in, because there's obviously been local residents that have walked to and from the concerts that have happened there, to the sort of open air theatre productions and all of that. But what do we know of visitors further afield that have visited those events and how they perceive them? What would they like more of? Where are they staying? And what can we build on? Thank you.
So I'm happy to with the photos just as quickly. We did spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we had obviously a diverse range of places within Monmouthshire and events and things like that. So there was a whole spreadsheet with various, how many times we've shown X or Y or Z. So that's probably why there's only one representation of Caldecott Castle on there. It was good to see, for example, in the resident responses slide, one of the three strongest aspects of Monmouthshire's destination offer. You can see in the word cloud, we'll be able to see if you look at that slide. Caldecott Castle is actually one of their resident responses. It's always been one of the places which residents love. Just go there and you see the number of the ones dog walking and everything around. So it is a very important part of the offer for Monmouthshire, and we definitely recognise it with its wide number of events that they have there.
Anything else? Okay.
I just wanted to, if there was any feedback from visitors to those sort of, not just the normal events that go on in the castle, but the music concerts, those food things that we've had sort of are new to the castle in the last sort of 18 months really, and what we can do more of to to draw even. And actually, can I just mention the Armed Forces Day was absolutely fantastic, and to see all those people and the feedback from sort of visitors and people attending on that day was actually great as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, have we done? Yeah.
I think we might need to check with the culture team and come back to you on that.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just a very quick point. I mean, obviously following on from what Councillor Strong said, I mean, one of the things that you said was you were trying to promote was the market towns, and in a sense, you know, I think, you know, there are themes in the towns, you know, for example, you know, there's castles within the market towns, Chepstow, Caldecott, Abergavenny. I'm not sure, is there one in Monmouth as well, Jane? Yeah. So, you know, in a sense, you know, it would have been nice to see a bit more of that within the plan. And obviously, you know, in Chepstow, they also have events at the castle, you know, like Castle Rock. I think it has been mentioned, but there hasn't been any pictures of it and that sort of thing. So also the town centres, in terms of their appearance, I think this was something that was mentioned. I mean, I think Abergavenny is very good in terms of you know, it's paved over areas and so forth. And I did send Councillor Paul Griffiths a photograph I got of elsewhere, you know, and I was thinking about Chepstow town centre, because there was sort of like grey square panels on one area that I saw in Cheshire in a town, and it was a surface that could be used you know, by cars and pedestrians, but it was obviously a separate road as such, but it did improve the look of the area, you know, and obviously some of the paving stones in Chepstow have just been put over with tarmac rather than properly replaced with either red paving stones or other paving stones. So I do think in terms of when people come to look at the area, you know, it's important what the town centres actually look like. Thank you.
Okay, anybody wish to respond to that?
Just picking up on that last point, really, I think when we're thinking about our town centres, we have a range of approaches to be able to address that, and our placemaking plans are probably the places for considering how those are delivered. The destination management plan is something that seeks to sort of deliver on that wider aspect, and it feeds into those place-based approaches. So the the placemaking plan, I think, is the place where we would hope to see those opportunities for town centre improvements delivered within the context of what we're trying to achieve within the destination management plan.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, it's very interesting. Many of you have asked many of the questions I had written down, so that's brilliant. Thank you very much. However, sorry, there's always going to be one, isn't there? I was wondering, please, when we talked about accommodation, we haven't really talked about disability accommodation, particularly in light of the increase of accommodation. So is there a number on that? Also, when we talked about the responses to our consultation, am I mistaken in only reading 80 responses, please? Because that's one of my questions. Because is it a lot more than 80? Because we, I believe, have 2.28 million visitors, and yet we have 80 responses. Is that correct? Because if that's the case, percentage-wise, that sort of puts us back to rather low figures, doesn't it? Also, how many jobs percentage-wise does this actually create? So we've talked about how much income it brings, and it's very gratefully received, obviously, but how many jobs does actually tourism give to Monmouthshire? And you also mentioned, I'm sorry to ask this one, but I will because it was mentioned, that we had a consultant do this report. If so, who and how much or whatever, please, because I thought we've got our own team. But I just asked that one. Is that allowed? Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'll just pick up on that last one, if I may, and then we'll deal with them in order. In terms of, yes, what we did have a consultant to help us deliver on the report. It is a very small team in Monmouthshire. We don't have the resources and the capacity to be able to fully deliver on such a comprehensive plan. So in any work that we would deliver at this scale and this level, we would need to seek support to do that. And we chose a very well respected and reputable consultant who had considerable experience within the market and within Wales. And I think she's done a grand job to be able to take us to this point. So it has been very much a collaborative approach. You know, to say that you've got Nicola and Kevin here, and just to bear in mind, obviously, the officers spend time looking at many other areas as well as part of their duties. So it's a testament to their commitment and tremendous work ethic that they've got to this point to get this report to this stage. So the report itself, in terms of figures, Nick, 15,000, so extremely good value for money, I would say. These days, consultancy costs have gone through the roof, and I think Mary Stevens held her costs at a very low level for some time on it. So we've had a really good deal in terms of time for that.
Okay, thank you. It wasn't necessarily a negative point. It was just a general one, because trust me, people would like to know. Yeah.
So in terms of the jobs, so currently it's, well, for 2024, there were 3,422 full-time equivalent jobs, and the plan aims to deliver a 25% increase on the life of the plan.
Okay, so 25% increase, yet we're oversubscribed on accommodation. Was that not fair? Am I missing?
Very oversubscribed.
Yeah, you said that later.
Got too much.
Right. Okay. And disability?
Sorry, that question. So it's a complicated answer. It's not an easy answer.
Never is.
Sorry.
Never is an easy answer.
It's not an easy answer because different people have different access needs, and what one person in one situation with a specific set of access needs is accessible to them may not be for the next person. So we have access statements. We try to have them for all of our accommodation. We certainly have the functionality to add that to our websites, but we rely on the information from our operators, from those accommodation providers, to populate the website with the information on accessibility. Some are very good at doing it and some aren't. But we've got some accommodation that is particularly accessible, and we promote it as such, but there's a lot of variation from not at all accessible to very accessible, and depending what those persons' access needs were, it's matching those specific needs with the accommodation type really that's important. And the way that we do that is by trying to provide as much information on the website about the accessibility of each type of accommodation. Does that answer your question?
No, it does, and I get it, and I'm just asking because that would be one of the questions that, again, I'll get asked.
But we've certainly given out some capital grants to some tourism businesses, and in this round, two glamping businesses. So Penheim Glamping and Seven Hills Hideaway both have grants to improve accessibility. So there is demand in the market, as you're aware, and businesses are responding to that and trying to work out how they can fund it. And our capital grant scheme is one of the ways that they do that.
That's very useful to know. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who will be interested. I just wanted to also pick up, and this is rather a larger subject, which goes a lot further than just here, which is about parking is obviously a huge issue for everybody. Whilst we've got an amazing team that would come to visit us for a different subject, I'm quite sure their skills and knowledge really do feed into all that we've been talking. And I'm quite sure some of them have been sat there trying not to say anything. I'm just wondering if our guests at the back, yes, I am talking to you, Mr. Cleaver, and Mrs. Barker, whether or not any of you had any thoughts and whether you wish to ask or hand in or comment on anything, particularly when they were talking about towns. Anybody? You don't have to. I was just putting you on the spot, seeing as you're here, and whether or not you wish to add anything.
Yes, from a personal perspective, sorry, Nigel Leeworthy. From a personal perspective, you know, it was really, really pleasing to hear the feedback relating to the towns, you know, to the areas, but biodiversities. But yes, it was very pleasing because obviously our teams get involved in a lot of that activity. But yes, that from my perspective, yeah, it was extremely positive. There were a lot of challenging questions that that I did hear. It's not easy, but yeah, it was very pleasing.
Well, I'd like to thank you and all your teams for all you do, particularly when we were referencing how important it is to our tourism. So, for example, the walks, the rights of ways, etc. It is, you know, you are here. It's just rather convenient to actually say it to you all publicly and to all your staff that thank you very much because you make it work, and we are all grateful. So, has anybody else got anything to say on this subject? Because if we haven't, I suggest we take a oh, you see, you saved the best to last, Councillor.
You flatter me, Chair. I haven't got a raise hand facility for some reason. One thought that enters my mind is that looking at tourism and travel needs change over time. And just thinking of my hometown of Abergavenny, we had a town council meeting last night where we were told that really a very, very exciting development has just won mega bucks from the National Lottery to promote itself, and that's the Gunter Trust, and the home of St. David Lewis, who was the last man to be hung, drawn and quartered in Britain, and an old boy of King Henry VIII school, who was foolish enough to be a Roman Catholic in Elizabethan England when it wasn't a very good idea. But that potentially will bring people from around Europe to look at the legacy of David Lewis in Abergavenny. Now, that's something that obviously is so new that it's not in any of the stuff we've looked at today. But we mustn't miss the trick, and potentially would put Abergavenny on a lot of maps. I was thinking of another example of how tourism moves on. At the turn of the 19th, maybe 20, no, about 1900, I think it was, Buffalo Bill brought his Wild West show to Abergavenny, and it was set up in Bailey Park in the centre of Abergavenny. And apparently Buffalo Bill looked up and saw the Sugarloaf and refused to start the show till he'd walked to the top of the Sugarloaf and back so he could look over Abergavenny. Nicola, you mentioned collaboration with the town council. The earliest example that I've come across was following that Wild West show. Abergavenny Town Council actually erected some benches on the top of the Sugarloaf and a path up to the top for townspeople who wanted to follow in Buffalo Bill's footsteps. And the remains of some of those early benches have survived to now, into the 21st century. And a last tiny remnant of how the town council had the good sense to collaborate with developing tourism 100 years ago or more. So we need to always be looking at trends and how we keep abreast with what people want, because Buffalo Bill certainly did a lot for Abergavenny, and I hope that David Lewis, several hundred years after his demise, has the potential to do similar, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. As I said, the best to last. Okay, I suggest we take a break. Yes, I'm getting the nod, Jack. Break for 10 minutes, please, and we'll start on the second agenda. Before we dismiss, thank you ever so much, guys, for coming in. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Colette. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Sarah. Are you staying for the second one or not? I don't know. Truly, thank you very much. It is not easy, and I know that, but it's important that you go through it all. And I'm sorry, and I hope we've asked enough questions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. I hope you're suitably refreshed. Okay, so we go to item number 6 on the agenda, which is litter and fly tipping. And in front of us, we have 4 amazing officers from Monmouthshire MCC. I'm sorry, build you up, because you're only going to talk rubbish. Oh, come on, that was good. Even for me off the cuff, that was good. All right. So without further ado, I'll pass forward and ask somebody to take us forward, please. And obviously introduce yourselves when you first start, if you would be so kind, for anybody watching. Carl's doing it, is he? He was laughing so much he wasn't organised.
Chair, hi, I'll be very happy to do a quick introduction as cabinet member. I'm sorry I'm not in the chamber. I've got a bit of a cold.
Okay.
Is it all right if I just? It's okay. I should have told you. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. Sorry, I missed. No, it's right. So no, we'll give Carl the benefit of that. Carl has taken up side there. Councillor, maybe if you'd like to introduce her.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll be quick. I know litter is a shared concern amongst members, and I mean, Monmouthshire generally scores very well on street cleanliness, but I think we all want to see it do better still. And we are all aware of particular problem areas and issues. It's a difficult problem to solve because it's about human behaviour. It seems like, you know, there's people who pick up litter and there's people who drop litter. But one of the really persistent problems we have is roadside litter. And it's pretty obvious when you litter pick that it's almost all food on the go packaging, sandwich wrappers, crisp packets, plastic drinks bottles, etc. I know officers are going to give you an update on how we deal with litter as a council and with all our amazing volunteers. But I wanted to take this opportunity just to update you quickly on what I've done to implement the motion we agreed in the summer. That was in the June council, I think I remember correctly. I promised to write to the Cabinet Secretary at Welsh Government to ask that action be taken on this issue. And I specifically wrote to ask for action on legislation to enable car owners, the registered keepers, to be fined for littering, which had been recently introduced in England. It's really difficult to see who's dropping litter, so going to the keeper is a more practical option. Also to ask for action on the introduction of the deposit return scheme. Thirdly, to ask for publication of the National Litter and Fly Tipping Strategy. And those were 3 things that were requested in the motion that we agreed. And I added to that request something to do ask the Cabinet Secretary to do something about the problem we have with trunk road litter. That the County Council is responsible for litter collection, even on our Sutra managed roads, and we can only clear litter on those roads by closing a carriageway and paying for the traffic management cost of that, which can be 30,000 plus at a time. So those are the 4 things I asked about in the letter. I did receive a reply, and myself and Carl Tuig also were on a meeting yesterday with the Cabinet Secretary on the regional meeting around waste management, where we were able to ask to follow up further on that. So the update I can give you is on enforcement, including litter from cars. Welsh Government are looking at this issue but haven't concluded the best way forward. They're looking at a range of different measures and how they can interact. Interestingly, in conversation with other local authorities, this issue of litter thrown from cars was raised as an actual criminal activity, a deliberate thing that criminals do, presumably get paid for collecting litter and then chuck it out somewhere else, which is of a slightly different category, obviously, from individuals being carelessly, perhaps thoughtlessly dropping litter. So they're looking at different kind of levels of enforcement and how they might do that. On deposit return scheme, more positive information. The plan is to launch this in 2027 in tandem with the rest of the UK. They're hoping this will have a significant impact on littering. They've been learning from other countries such as Germany and Latvia. They're keen in Wales to see more reuse from that, not just recycling, and to phase that aspect in. It will cover glass, PET bottles, that's polyethylene terephthalate, I think, yeah, aluminium and steel containers from 150ml to 3 litre sizes. And the consultation is out at the moment on the details of that.
On the littering and the National Litter and Fly Tipping Plan, they did have a draft of that, and they're basically implementing it without having finalised it. So I think, in effect, reading between the lines is a little out of date because they've already implemented most of it, with most of the key themes taken up in current delivery. On the roadsides, a bit frustrated. It seems that Welsh Government do take responsibility for litter on motorways and some trunk roads, but not any of the ones in our area, not any of the trunk roads in Monmouthshire, but they're not offering to go further on that. So we're still stuck with the best we can do is to get alerts of upcoming road closures from Sutra to make sure that we can clear litter without the cost of extra traffic management. So that's a quick summary of the answers. And then the other big change, which Carl knows much more about than me and the implementation of, is we're moving into the extended producer responsibility phasing in, which means that producers have to bear the cost of disposal of the materials. And this should help over time to reduce packaging and hence litter, as well as obviously to help with the public sector costs of waste management generally. And then one last thing just to tell you, of interest is there is a cross-party group on litter at Welsh Government who have produced a manifesto. It's called Which Wales Do We Want? And it's really worth a look. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Carl, you're on. All right, so thank you very much. When you're ready, Carl.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. We've pulled together a short slide deck. We'll run through it. Hopefully you've had a chance to see it in advance. I'll race through the slides and then open up to questions for the officers, as that is more important that we speak about what we want to do in the future and where we want to see the team go in and the direction of travel for us as well. So we were asked some specific questions. I believe some of them come through Councillor Davis, but we were asked to pull them together for this scrutiny. It's quite difficult to answer some of these questions, but we've tried to cover it off through the slides. I'll come back to the question page at the end when we get to questions and try and cover some of them off, but it is going to be more around the conversations with the team members here today. So from a legislative perspective, the management and litter and street cleansing comes under COPLA, which is the Code of Practice for Litter and Refuse. We have duties under that code to collect litter material along with refuse, and standards set within there that we are trying to achieve, that we need to try to achieve. The COPLA is just being reviewed now. Areas of it are probably not fit for purpose for where we are today, but they're currently reviewing the whole standard. Along with that, they're also reviewing the LEAMS standards in Wales, and a new programme, GLAN, is due to come out. I think in part, as the councillor mentioned, they're slightly in front of the publication of all of this and trying to be in advance of what they're trying to achieve. So we've had quite early discussions with them about that, what that will look like for us as a local authority as well. As I said, Code of Practice sets out what we have to do, also sets out what we don't have responsibility for. Bus and rail stations being the big ones, certain trunk roads being mostly the motorway sections that we don't have responsibility to clear litter from. We do have responsibility to clear litter from all of the other trunk roads running through Monmouthshire. So COPLA, and I apologise that it's so small on screen, but hopefully you have seen this in the pre-meeting notes. So the COPLA gives an idea of what type of area the counties are broken into, and then the standards that need to be achieved in those areas. So that's what that's showing. They run on ABCD grade for the roads, meaning no litter, a bit of litter, more litter, a lot of litter. In layman's terms, I'm sure they've called it something else in there, but and then it sets out, so a town centre, if it falls to a D grade level of litter, you have a certain amount of time to get that cleared. That's what the guidance sets out. And every area is covered under that COPLA. We don't know what is being reviewed in the new one, but some of the challenges in COPLA, particularly here around trunk roads, is that time scale of getting it cleared when we have to set up traffic management and other. It ain't as simple as just going out and clearing the roads. It is a process. We can't just close roads. We have to work with others around those traffic management issues and ensuring the network is flowing. So even though there are guidelines on it, it's not always possible for us to deliver against those guidelines. In general, in our towns, we keep them very clean. We can manage that type of COPLA type standard, and that's quite important to say, because it is more focused around the heavy footfall areas are what are considered the most important. From a service perspective, we have grounds and cleansing split over 3 depots. So we have one in Mitchell Troy, one down in Caldicot, and one in Abergavenny. We do run out of Raglan depot as well, but the teams are run out of the 3 operational depots. So each depot has a precinct sweeper in it, so one of the small sweepers that goes out and does a lot of the smaller areas and the town centres. We've got our EPA team, which is Environmental Protection Action Team. They go out and clear the fly tipping and do a lot of the litter picking and bin emptying across the depots. We do have a specific litter collector down in Caldicot covering Sevenside, but in general is picked up by the EPA teams. Across the whole service, we have 15 staff. So it's not a lot of staff to cover everything that we do. We've got 1,600 kilometres of roads, so they've all got 1,600 kilometres of road times 2. So they've got at least 100 kilometres of road to cover for each person. So it gives you an idea of the scale of what we're trying to achieve. In 2025 now, we have a large sweeper that we're currently using that is with highways, and we are just looking to secure one for grounds and cleansing so that we've got more capacity to do the bigger sweeping areas and then provide additional capacity in our towns and villages as well. So the bigger sweeper will be a real benefit, and I'll come to how that's being funded in a minute. We've got town teams which are paid for by the town councils in Chepstow, Abergavenny and Maker and Caldicot. So that's a joint team, and we're currently in discussions with Monmouth, Raglan, Little Mill about bringing in more capacity for the town teams. Oh, Nigel was telling me it's Goitre, not Little Mill. So yeah, the town teams deliver services over and above the statutory need. So as well as litter picking, they'll paint benches, they'll tidy up areas, they'll cut back edges, they'll do a lot more than just litter picking, but they are certainly doing their fair share of litter picking in the towns as well and keeping the towns clean. The other support we have in our 15 person team pales into insignificance to what we get from the volunteer in sector. 6 litter groups, 419 litter collectors, litter champions. We work with the probation service doing some work, and we have got wider grounds people picking up some litter, and some of our refuse crews also go out and pick up litter particularly on windy days as well. So there's a little bit more scope than just a team of 15, but to put it in perspective, the 419 litter champions, if they only did 2 hours a week, and many of them do much more than that, it's the equivalent to another 25-30 staff that we need. So they do a huge amount of work in keeping the county clean, and Abergavenny has just won an award from Keep Wales Tidy, not just for Monmouthshire, but for the whole of Wales, which shows how committed they are to keeping our environment clean with us. So the cost of dealing with litter, and this is purely litter, it's not all of the cleansing area. We did this in conjunction with RAP as part of the EPR funding, so the Extended Producer Responsibility funding. EPR is looking to fund litter collection as well, not just waste collection. They are looking to actively do something with litter, which would be really good, because that would put an extra pot of money into the grounds and cleansing area of work to fund more of what we do. So as well as the deposit return scheme, which will hopefully reduce roadside litter, will reduce litter because there's an immediate value to those materials. The extended producer responsibility should also reduce the weight and volume of litter because they've got to pay for it, and also provide direct funding to public services to make litter collection more efficient, more effective. So the scale of the issue, I think, you know, when we go out and speak with the public, when certainly for you as members, I'm sure when you're on the doorstep, litter, dog fouling, all of these issues are going to be there. I'm sure pothole, in fact, everything that I do will probably be on your list to come and ask me, shout at me, first beg me to get things done. So, but litter is certainly one of those issues. From a Monmouthshire perspective, we have a very good track record with our Leams data. We are very high achieving council in that sense, usually within the top 3 councils for less litter rather than more litter. Obviously, the less litter being found. Our own surveys that we run in conjunction with Keep Wales Tidy, we often find more areas littered than Keep Wales Tidy does. So, you know, we are looking for it as well. We're not shying our eyes from it. We are looking for that litter and trying to resolve these issues as well. But we're scoring very high scores for the lack of litter being found across the county. We have a very low number of complaints, direct complaints about litter, but I do appreciate that litter is a conversational piece on the street and on the doorstep more than it is a complaint issue that somebody will go to the problem of reporting. As part of the RAP work, there's some comparisons in there with other councils of where we sit in efficiency, costing of different things. So I'm happy to share more of that information with members in the background. And there's just an idea of the quantity of roads and areas that we cover. So 1,600 kilometres of county roads times 2, because we've got 2 sides of each road. We've got 120 kilometres of trunk roads times 2, obviously, for the same reason. On a lot of our trunk roads, we've also got the central reservation, so it's times 3 on some of them, times 4 even on some. Yeah. We've got 6 main towns, and we've got 2.25 million metres squared of open land. So when you compare that to the 15 staff that we have, you can imagine how grateful we all are to our litter champions that are out there doing a lot of this work for us. And I can't thank them enough for the work that they put in every town and in every area. And the future, and that's probably what we've come today, is to understand what you want to see, where you want to see us going forward, and where we think we can deliver and what we can deliver against. So the EPR funding, we've used some EPR funding this year to put into grounds and cleansing, the circular economy part of that department. And that has freed up some additional funding to go into purchasing an extra sweeper and some additional litter operatives as well. That's only just coming through now, so you won't see the benefit of that yet, but over the next 6 months, you definitely should start seeing the benefit of that. This year, we've been given Tidy Towns funding. We are looking to set up 2 teams of 2 to deliver against the issues that you will hear about on the doorstep, the issues that are coming through to us: cleaning bus stops, cleaning signage, looking at signing and lining, litter picks in certain areas, just generally giving it a bit of cleanup. I know for Councillor Bryn, particularly cleaning footpaths and the back edge of footpaths is that kind of thing that, you know, we get a lot of requests for, but they're a long way down the priority list for us that we can't always get to as soon as we'd like to. So hopefully these 2 teams will deliver against those actions over the next 6 months, and we'll see an improvement. If it works, what we'd like to do is fund a team full time for community improvement type work going forward. But that's, you know, that's what this meeting is for, is discussions around that idea. We've been given Pride in Place additional funding at the moment. That's sat with the Regen team, but I am sure there will be benefits coming out of the Regen team within the town centres that make everything better. And, you know, listening to the tourism and marketing earlier, it is important that our towns look the best, that our entrances to Wales look the best, that we are there welcoming people in. So I'm hoping that we benefit as a department out of some of that funding, but I know any improvements in the town will make things better for everyone. So, you know, we're focusing on what we do, which is keep the towns clean as best we can. One of the areas that a lot of our litter champions discuss is enforcement. You know, none of us want to be an end-to-pipe solution. We would like littering to stop, not to rely on 420 people out collecting it every week, giving up their time. I'm sure they could volunteer and do much more positive things, much more creative things with us if litter wasn't such an issue as well. So enforcement, we've looked at, we've got some costings to work with one of the litter enforcement companies. It's around £50,000 for 6 months for 2 staff to come in with a vehicle, travel around the county to do work on both the dog fouling PO. Yeah, I won't even pretend to know what it stands for. So Public Services Protection Order. Public Spaces. I won't far out. So the Public Spaces Protection Order. Normally, you would work with these companies. They would come in. They would hit the town centres quite hard and be driven by getting fine money to pay for themselves. We don't particularly want to take that stance. We would rather work with them to hit a much wider area and perhaps not get as many fines, but actually get a message much wider across. Dog fouling on our open play areas and our, more importantly, sports play grounds across the winter is quite difficult for us, and we shouldn't be having people letting dogs onto those areas. So it won't create a huge amount of fines, but we're hoping it will create a huge amount of knowledge of what should be done. Obviously, in the town centres, if they are patrolling the town centres and they see people littering, there's a very good chance of catching people in the town centre. When you drive out into the rural area, seeing people is difficult. Catching them dropping litter, especially when you're dressed in black and look like a police officer, is even more difficult. So I'm not expecting it to have a huge impact outside. I am expecting some fines to be pushed out in the town centres, and hopefully when people understand that it's enforcement, it'll have a wider impact. But again, we're not driving this. We want to understand what members want and whether they think enforcement is a good idea. If it is, what we were looking at bringing him in for 3 months this year and 3 months next year, because we don't have that level of budget in year to do this type of work. But I'll shut up now. I've rattled through there, conscious of time, and that there will be questions. So,
Carl, you were doing brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. I automatically want to open up to questions, and I know Councillor Bryn will have her hand up already. If she hasn't, I'll be surprised. And Jackie beat her, Councillor Strong. But Yeah, Councillor Strong.
So I've just switched myself off. Thanks, Carl, and thanks for the team. I mean, littering is something that we as elected members get asked about by our residents all the time. Community sort of Facebook pages and whatever. I know that there's a particular issue in Caldecott about bins overflowing at certain times, sometimes when it's events at the castle, and then there's a huge amount of sort of detritus in the town centre. So that's maybe something that I think you're probably talking to with the town council anyway. But I'm quite interested in the enforcement bit, because obviously we want to change people's behaviour, don't we? So the enforcement will, alongside it, have some sort of, I don't know, campaign about stop littering. There will be repercussions if you do. I mean, it's not just a enforcement, but it's got to be about changing people's behaviour, really. I just wanted to ask about that. The issue about I'm going to get the thing wrong, the PS, whatever it was, the dog fouling issue. You know, we obviously saw that through this committee, and took a great interest in making sure that, especially on school playing fields, some of the castle areas also were sort of not open to sort of dog walkers, having dogs on leads and all of that. So it's all about that enforcement, and I don't see it. I mean, obviously it's about sort of the play areas and the football and the rugby pitches and stuff. I don't see it so much on pavements. I see it on those sort of green areas and open spaces, really, more than anything else. So anything that we can do to stop people doing things that they shouldn't be doing, or letting their dogs do what they shouldn't be doing, is a good thing. So thank you, and thank you for your team for all your endeavours. I just want to end up saying that the other Councillor Strong and I went to Newport a couple of weeks ago up to St Willis for the civic service, and actually I was appalled about some of the streets in Newport when we walked back to the car, and I thought we wouldn't see that in our bit of Monmouthshire. So I think it's everything in perspective, and I do want to thank you for all you do. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, please.
If I just come back a little bit on the enforcement side of things and your comment about communication as well. And I think communication is a really important element of the enforcement piece. The purpose of the enforcement obviously ultimately is to improve behaviour, to prevent littering in the first place. And despite all of the education work that we've done has been, you know, it's still an ongoing issue. So an enforcement piece is really so underpins that work, really. But the communication part of that is really important, and it's got to be, from our perspective, a very positive message, which is about making Monmouthshire, and much as we've heard about the discussion that was earlier on today, actually, is about making it a welcoming and pleasant place. So the enforcement will be about changing behaviour, getting a positive outcome, as Carl mentioned, not about chasing fines, but paying a company to do that enforcement piece, which means we can spread them not just in the high, necessarily the easy to spot places, but trying to make sure they cover all of those places, the sports pitches, the parks, as well as the town centres, and that we will do a communicate. If this is something that the councillors want us to progress, then we would be looking at doing a good bit of communications to sit alongside that, to raise awareness that enforcement officers will be out there for the benefit of everybody, particularly our children who are playing on sports pitches, to hopefully create that preventative element, as well as, you know, catching people who are perhaps not doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so we move on to it is Councillor Bryn.
Thank you very much. And I just want to extend my gratitude to you as a team, and to all our hundreds of volunteers that keep Monmouthshire as clean as it is. as Councillor Strong said, if you go to any other county, I spent quite a lot of time going back and forth to Cardiff, and the streets there are shocking. And I think that's why we're quite, it upsets us so much to see the mess on our trunk roads, because it is in stark contrast to our streets. So when it upsets us and say, this is Monmouth, you know, the rest of it's so pretty, why, you know, so clean, why are we putting up with the volume of mess on our trunk roads? And obviously as litter pickers, we're kind of itching to go out there and pick it up ourselves, and we're not allowed. What I wanted to ask was, as Councillor Strong mentioned, the dog fouling on sports pitches. I mean, every time I walk through Chippy Fields, I see people walking, they're still walking their dogs without leads onto the pitches, and how, enforcement aside, is there any way that we can make sure people understand the changes in the laws now locally to try to prevent that before we go down the enforcement route? Though I'm happy to see enforcement at some point, but just to make sure people understand that this is no longer now accepted, that they let their dog, because they've been doing, in fairness, it's been going on for years. People have been allowed to let their dogs run on, well, maybe not acceptable, but it wasn't against the law for them to let their dogs run on dog pitches, and maybe making sure that people understand that that is no longer acceptable in certain areas. And also, I understand that we've had a number of clever bins now installed. I don't know if they have been yet, and if they have been, what is the feedback from that regarding, funny enough, about the overflowing bins? Is that assisting with that if they have been now been installed, and the effectiveness of them? And then with enforcement, I don't know if you're aware, but Buckinghamshire use roadside cameras, and they've even got kind of like they've got Twitter and Blue Sky accounts that kind of like highlighting the people that they're catching from not just fly tipping, but literally just lobbing things out of their car windows. And I think, although I don't like to see enforcement, I think if we are going to use it, then we need to use those cases to spread the word that this is not what this is not what we want to see in Monmouthshire. We'd rather you didn't do it, but if you do it, you could get caught. And if that is something, if we do go down the enforcement route, if that is something we could do so that we get better, so we're not just chastising one person, we're using it to kind of like spread the message as to this is the result of littering. And could we consider that, please? Yeah.
So please, after you. Welcome, Sue, by the way. First time I've ever seen you in here, so welcome. I hope you're well.
Thanks, Councillor Lucas, and yeah, thanks, Councillor Bryn also. Yeah, the dog fouling and dogs still being walked on football pitches, I know is a problem across the county, to be honest with you. And I'm often putting my enforcement jacket on when I'm out and about and talking to dog owners. I don't personally have the ability to fine people, because I'm not able to do that, but I do go and talk to dog owners and say, do you understand that you shouldn't be keeping your dog, you're not allowed to walk your dogs here, and in other places like in Vista Gardens where people have to keep their dogs on leads. And you do have to keep on reinforcing the message, and people do say that they just don't know this. So yeah, we're thinking about some additional information to put out to dog owners, particularly as in relation to sports pitches, because I think that is especially a problem, especially now that the football and rugby season started again, and the darker evenings. We need to get the message out now, really, to people. And yeah, I agree with you that we need to use any enforcement for its deterrent effect, much more so than for any fines that we get. And I think that really is the approach we'll be taking. Yeah, and I'll let Mark take on the question about smart bins.
As I mentioned in the meeting we had earlier in the year about the smart bins, we've had some difficulties with the technology getting it right. That's been resolved. The litter bin sensors have started going back out now, but aren't fully deployed. So unfortunately, they haven't been used fully in action. So there isn't really much to learn from it yet. There are a number of sensors sitting under my desk at the moment waiting to go out. So it is something I'm going to be working on in over the next month, 6 weeks or so, to try and get those fully deployed. So as soon as we've got that set out, then obviously we'll we'll be able to report back on how effective it's been and what we've learned from it. But I am quite hopeful now, so we know how what problems were, and that the data will be good quality data, because that's ultimately what we're after. We'll be able to give you some more feedback on that. And I will reiterate what Sue said about any enforcement action that we take where we're able to use that for publicity. We've already had a discussion about some enforcement action the council recently took regarding a tree, where we've managed to get that into the local press, even managed to get in the Forestry Journal. So that is definitely a direction, because it's about getting the message out, really, prevention rather than sort of thing.
Councillor Bryn.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think I'd be good to, hopefully it will prevent the issues of bins overflowing, which nobody wants to see, and and give you some helpful data for future use. Funny enough, I bumped into the postman the other day, and he was checking the letterbox, and there was no letters in there. And I went, Monmouthshire's got special sensors. Why aren't the post office using them? They'll tell you that there's a letter in the letterbox and see you coming out. So yeah, I've been showing off. Look, we haven't even got them installed yet.
Don't tell the world that.
I will add one other thing, actually, and it is a debate that's ongoing, and it's also something I don't think people perhaps realise that we do even without the sort of technical side of data collection. Our crews are collecting data just through their activities in emptying bins, so we get a lot of feedback in terms of what goes into bins, what the type of materials are, and the amount of dog waste and those sorts of things, business waste, misuse of bins. And we do have a regular, I wouldn't say review of all bins, but we're certainly looking to see where some of our bins are perhaps not appropriately placed, and where we do need new bins. So there is this sort of gentle, constant churn where bins are perhaps moved or removed and placed in slightly different places to try and be effective. Because as you can appreciate, many of our bins were perhaps the locations they were put in may have been decided 20, 30 years ago, may not be appropriate to today's society. So there is a constant need to have bins moved about. So that's something that I think everybody shouldn't be surprised at if they hear or see that happening. And obviously we're happy to respond to inquiries if that does happen. But it's not necessarily something we would be alerting people to on an everyday basis, because it's sort of business as usual.
Okay, thank you. You're right. Yep. All right, Councillor Brown, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got 2 or 3 questions. First of all, just to say, thank you to Carl and his team for all the work you do on litter picking, and it's not an easy job out in all weathers, I should imagine. And also, obviously, to the volunteers who do deserve a big thank you. One of the questions I was asking about, I was interested in your last slide, which was about the future up for discussion. And then you talked about EPR funding, Tidy Towns funding, Pride in Place and enforcement. I just wondered where those funding streams, how much what were in each of those schemes, and are they going to continue beyond the dates that you've put there? And with regard to I think, did you say EPR was, I can't remember, was it extended producer responsibility or something fund? And I just wondered who pays for that fund, and how does it operate? Because obviously there are litter that is actually produced quite often from takeaway premises like McDonald's and so forth, and I just wondered whether or not they would be contributing towards that, because I think we did have, I don't know what's happened on that planning application, but there was a planning application for the new house industrial estate for McDonald's there, but also takeaways in terms of cups and so forth quite often do get thrown around. That's the first question. The second question was to do with our bins, which is basically I know that obviously county councils do sponsor themselves dog bins and so forth, but I just wondered, my understanding is that the general bins can actually be used for dog waste as well, but it isn't necessarily clear on the bins themselves that they can be used in that way. I don't know whether it's all bins or some bins, so perhaps you could answer that one. I don't know Tidy Towns funding, whether that extends beyond the towns, because obviously my area is just outside the town area. So I just wondered if it or Pride in Place extended any further. And with regard to enforcement, I mean, obviously that is important, but one of the things in my particular area on enforcement is but basically, you know, where farmers create mud on the road, and then you need to use the sweepers to get rid of that mud, and it's the farmer's responsibility. And I'd like to see, you know, it obviously costs the council money when it's the farmer's responsibility to actually clear up the mud from the road. And I know that I've been told there's a problem of evidence on that, but quite often you can actually see the tracks, the mud tracks actually coming from the farmer's field. So it's obvious where the mud on the road is being caused, and then that causes problems with the gutters and so forth. Thank you.
Who would like? Oh, Carl.
So on the funding side, it is, yeah, extended producer responsibility. That funding comes from the people that make the packaging. So in a roundabout way, anybody that buys the packaging to sell to us will be paying part of that levy. The extended producer responsibility funding is to take the burden off the public purse for the collection of packaging material that's already out there. So that's the general purpose of the extended producer responsibility. We secured just over £4 million this year. But this financial year, it's been very difficult, challenging with understanding when the money was coming, but we've got it now. And for next year, we will know in November what the funding looks like for next year. So that will help with budget setting and everything else for next year. The funding is there predominantly to use for waste management, but the circular economy side of what we do in reducing waste and being green and more sustainable is an important part of that, which is why we've used some of the funding to pay for the circular economy team that sits in grounds and cleansing, which has freed up some of the grounds and cleansing budget to pay for extra sweepers. The EPR funding is looking to pay for litter collection as well. It's currently only paying for domestic waste collection. It is looking to do litter. So we need to gather a lot of the evidence, a lot of the data that was being asked for by the scrutiny around tonnages and all that. We need to start gathering that data, and that's a piece of work we'll be carrying on with now. The Tidy Towns funding covers everything. So Tidy Towns funding in the past has been predominantly around litter collection. It's a much bigger, wider remit this year. It is looking at, you know, bus stops. It's looking at white lines. It's looking at cleaning signs. It's looking at all the things that get on people's nerves. And is the easiest way of saying it. It's nuisance value things that people, you know, members are coming to me all the time with. It is those kind of issues that the Tidy Towns is covering. So yes, that stretches out much further than just the town centres. The Pride in Place funding is a government pot of money given to all the local authorities and is primarily focused on developing assets and looking at the town centres. So we haven't got funding from that this year, but there are other elements of that, looking at footpaths, improving other stretches, improving access to towns. And I know for Councillor Bryn, that's quite an important thing. So I would like to think that rather than just building new and shiny, we will be putting some money to fixing the old and needed assets that we've got. The deposit return scheme, so the DRS I mentioned, will is like the old Corona pop bottle man. So you pay a little bit extra for your pop bottle and you take it back to the shop and you get your money back. It's not quite decided how that's going to work in practice, but that's the principle of it. The Waste Resources and Action Programme, that's WRAP. They've done a lot of the work on the doing a lot of the work on the DRS and on the EPR. So that's why we're working closely with them in getting this data together. The enforcement side of it, and I know you're passionate about the mud on the road issue, Councillor Brown. So, you know, that's more of an highways function than it would be for these litter enforcement type people. They wouldn't be doing that, but it is, you know, the mud on the road goes down the drains and causes problems in the drains, and there is a much bigger cost and impact on the local authority rather than just the mud on the road. So it is something that we want to tackle. We have sent letters out to lots of farmers, albeit they're a more friendly letter at the moment, but we know that we need to start stepping up enforcement for this. Overgrown edges, ditches with riparian ownership that aren't being cleaned, because all these things are costing us as a council, and for a lot of them they are someone else's responsibility to work with us. I don't want to be out enforcing against farmers. I don't want to be out enforcing against local people that don't know they should be looking after drainage ditches and edges. What I want to do is do a bit of education with them, and then if they won't work with us, then we look at enforcement as the last option.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, you asked about dog waste in litter bins and whether it's all right for people to put dog waste in litter bins. It is. The town and community councils provide dog waste bins. They are quite a costly service to provide for town and community councils. Obviously, the county council provides litter bins. It is acceptable to put bagged dog waste in litter bins, but if a litter bin becomes full of dog waste, it becomes incredibly heavy to empty, and then we start coming into manual handling problems and a lot of complaints from our staff, who sometimes have to carry the content of litter bins quite a long way. So our message to members of the public really is we would rather they used a dog waste bin, took their dog waste home with them, disposed of it with their household waste, and kind of used the litter bin as a last resort, really, because it does present problems for us, because the litter bin is so much larger than a dog waste bin, so the volume is so much more. So yeah, that's the rationale we'd like the members of the public to use. They don't always, but we'd rather they picked it up and put it in a litter bin than not pick it up at all.
Yes, thank you. It does sound very positive about the EPR funding, and that making a big difference actually, which is a good thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bragg. Okay, Councillor Tudor Thomas, please.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm not going to repeat all, much of what's been said. I think enforcement is a contentious issue, but when you look at the cost of picking up litter, whether it's be in town, it's probably more expensive on the trunk roads, etc. But I do think, I can think who said it. I wasn't a big fan of hers, but she had a concept of the short, sharp shock sometimes might actually push people with spurts of enforcement, not continuous enforcement, but would force people, would remind them that they do need to pick up, dog litter. They can't drop litter whenever they want to, and in reality, whatever system you have in society, unfortunately, sometimes there have to be penalties. And with if you park on a double yellow line and you're penalised, that does probably prevent you from doing that for some time. If you've got to pay 50, 60 pounds because you parked on a double yellow line, you're unlikely to want to do that again. But I do think the issue of dog muck, Bailey Park's in my ward, incredible problem there. You've got football pitches, you've got rugby pitches. Who on earth would want to put their dog on that, knowing that young kids and adults are going to be playing rugby, their faces are going to go down on that pitch, and whether you've cleaned up the mess or not, there is still a residue there. And I'm just amazed when I've done sort of walks with other councillors, and Councillor Grocott and I were sort of, almost verbally abused by some people because we said, yeah, you should keep your dog on the lead and you shouldn't be allowing them to mess on the playing field. They felt that was a God-given right. And certainly the rugby club and I work together, and they have huge problems clearing up glass, dog muck, etc. So I do think, unfortunately, there has to be some penalty. And I do think as well, possibly working with people like McDonald's in Llanfoist, that rubbish ends up everywhere because people's lifestyles have totally changed. So many people now don't actually have food at home. They have it on the move. And then when they have fast food, they don't keep it in the car, they just throw it out of the window. So I do think we've got to raise awareness, and people are often approach me, and I know all the other councillors on this call, about things like rubbish, dog litter, glass, etc., cigarette ends. But really, I think we've got to raise the game, and unfortunately, I think we've got to use a bit of enforcement just to really remind people. Thanks.
Yeah, anybody want to answer? I wasn't quite sure it was questions or just statements, really. Statements, I think.
More of an awareness raising. I appreciate everything that Carl and the whole team there do and how responsive they are. So it's just raising that issue of enforcement. It's unpopular, but I think we've got to have it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dimmock.
Thank you, Chair. Carl, I think you and your team are brilliant. And I just want to echo what Councillor Thomas just said. If ever I need to get hold of someone, Carl, it's always you. I can Teams message you and I get a response there and then. But that being said, hedge cutting on some of the rural roads where litter then obviously isn't seen for considerable time, it starts to build up. I'm actually referring to around Leachpool Holdings in my ward. How do we schedule litter picking with areas like that? I did a litter pick back in the summer, of which Dave Lucas and his team kindly dropped me off some signage, because obviously I was taking volunteers down onto those verges around Withy Beds. I wasn't willing to take any of them any further because obviously that is a fast road. There's no footpath. I've got a really good team of volunteers in Portskewart. We do litter picks every quarter. We've taken up cutting overgrown hedges and weeding. I think it's probably due for a prettiest village in the whole of the county. Not that I'm biased or anything, but what can we do to make areas like that are difficult? I appreciate, obviously, the A449, they close the lane, they go out and litter pick, but obviously it's a bit more difficult with volunteers. And how do you schedule in getting those banks cleared after all the grass has been cut? Because obviously it's having a detrimental impact on wildlife living in those verges as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dimmock. And yeah, I am aware of the efforts that you and your team put in locally, and we thank you very much for that. So with regard to, you made reference to Leachpool. At present, the highways verge mowing is undertaken by local farmers, with a principal contractor. So what we ask of the operators on the tractors is that they actually feed back to us. The problem that we have with that is not done until an end of week. So they put together a list of routes that they have completed, and then a list of routes that they intend to cut. So we tried to pull that together. What I will say is that we have some very, very conscientious frontline staff, and they are enthused. You've got Rachel and Kevin down with yourself. They are empowered to make those decisions. If something needs litter picking, if they need assistance, you mentioned the traffic management, which is a challenge to us. Staff are continually being trained on traffic management. It's pulling all that together. It's the awareness factors. So we get, obviously, when teams are driving around, they work very, very closely. If a mowing team were to, or a supervisor were to evidence that there is litter, a lot of litter in certain areas, that is fed back to the area supervisor, David, in David Tucker, in your instance. Again, very proactive, but it's just that awareness. We are aware that there is a lapse in communication on times between the